At 14:23 hours Eastern on December 18th, a Shift 4 CEO took the oath on NASA's Flight Operations Manual. And with that signature, $4.6 billion in human landing system contracts just went hot. Here's the engineering reality the press briefings won't touch. Isaacman's Artemis landers require methane-fueled descent engines holding a thrust-to-weight ratio above 1.2 to 1. That's the number. Below that threshold, you don't land on the lunar South Pole. You impact it. The man now controlling those contracts personally logged 1,400 kilometers orbital altitude on Polaris Dawn with a 700-kilogram payload mass fraction. He's not a policy administrator. He's a flight-qualified operator who's read descent telemetry in real time. The mainstream is running "Billionaire Takes NASA" headlines. The telemetry tells a different story, one that mirrors James Begg's taking the reins in 1981 and pivoting the agency toward reusability before anyone understood the economics. Today we break down what this confirmation actually means for Starship Flight 7's 33 Raptors. Let's get into the data. The fanboy take says SpaceX already won this. Starship is the only lander, and Isaacman just made it official. But that's not what the contract language says. 3 active human landing system variants remain under development: SpaceX's Starship HLS, Blue Origin's Blue Moon Mark II, and the Dynetics Alpaca architecture. The contract structure requires dual-source redundancy per NASA Acquisition Regulation 1834.201, which means Isaacman inherits an obligation to validate all 3, not select a winner based on political convenience. The engine competition reveals why the SpaceX already won narrative falls apart under scrutiny. 230 tons force per engine times 33 engines, that's Starship's propulsion math. Blue Origin's BEE-7 runs 44 kilonewtons on hydrogen. These represent completely different propulsion philosophies. Media coverage frames this as Raptor dominance. More thrust equals better lander. But lunar descent doesn't reward raw thrust. It rewards throttle depth. The BE-7's hydrogen architecture enables a 10-to-1 throttle range for precision terminal descent. Raptor 3 vacuum demonstrates 40 to 100%, adequate but less granular when you're setting down on a specific crater rim at Shackleton. The trade-off cuts both ways. Raptor's methane is compatible with lunar in situ resource utilization. You could theoretically manufacture propellant on the moon. BE-7's hydrogen offers a specific impulse advantage, roughly 450 seconds compared to Raptor's 380. Neither architecture is definitively superior, and any administrator claiming otherwise is making a political statement, not an engineering assessment. This throttle question isn't academic. At Edwards Air Force Base in 1968, Neil Armstrong ejected from the Lunar Landing Training Vehicle at 200 feet, with less than a second to spare when its throttle response couldn't match pilot input. Throttle precision was life or death then, and the physics haven't changed. Now, critics call Isaacman a space tourist who bought a seat. The Polaris Dawn flight log says otherwise. 1,400 kilometers apogee, the highest Earth orbit since Apollo 17. The mission included the first commercial EVA using SpaceX-developed mobility units. The flight operations log shows Isaacman trained on Crew Dragon manual override procedures. That's more operational qualification than most Senate-confirmed administrators since John Glenn. $5.7 billion. That was the shuttle program realignment budget under James Beggs in 1981. Isaacman just inherited a $2.5 billion cut for FY26. History doesn't repeat, but the spreadsheet does. The mainstream frames Isaacman as unprecedented, a billionaire outsider with no policy experience. But James Beggs came from General Dynamics with active defense contracts. His confirmation faced identical conflict of interest challenges. Beggs prioritized reusable shuttle architecture over expendable Titan and Atlas continuation directly parallel to Isaacman's mandate to transition from SLS expendables to commercial reusables. Isaacman inherits an SLS program that has spent $23 billion to deliver 98 metric tons to low Earth orbit with zero reusability. The hot take says he'll cancel it immediately. Musk puppet kills NASA rocket. But that's not how federal appropriations work. SLS termination requires congressional appropriation reversal. Artemis II is already manifested on SLS Block 1 for September 2025. That flight happens regardless of who sits in the administrator's chair. Here's what Isaacman can actually control. He can deprioritize SLS Block 2 development, which carries a projected $12 billion price tag. But the Alabama delegation controls key appropriation subcommittees, and Michoud Assembly Facility has been building NASA rockets since the Saturn V. That's 50 years of congressional protection baked into the procurement structure. There's a regulatory bottleneck that space coverage consistently misunderstands. Starship Flight 7 requires FAA AST license modification. SpaceX fans have declared regulatory capture complete. Isaacman will fast-track all approvals. Here's the org chart reality. FAA AST operates under the Department of Transportation, not NASA. Isaacman has zero licensing authority. The actual bottleneck is NEPA compliance for Boca Chica expansion, statutory timelines that don't accelerate because a new administrator took office. If you want the deep dive on the Beggs transition, we covered it on our Cold War Space Race archive channel. Full 1981 confirmation hearing footage linked in the description. 25 tons force. That's the YF-785D engine thrust powering China's lunar lander stack. Their 2028 crewed landing target is not a talking point, it's a hardware manifest. Western coverage dismisses CNSA timelines as propaganda, but the hardware record tells a different story. The YF-75D hydrogen upper stage is flight-proven on Long March 5. Chang'e sample return missions validated precision lunar landing capability. The Mengzhou crew vehicle completed thermal qualification testing in 2024. The honest assessment, CNSA's 2028 timeline is aggressive, but technically credible. They have the engines, they have the landing heritage, and they have the crew vehicle in qualification testing. Meanwhile, Artemis III is manifested for 2026 with high schedule risk. Isaacman doesn't inherit comfortable margin, he inherits a genuine race condition. The immediate constraint is money. $2.5 billion, that's the FY26 NASA top-line reduction Isaacman must absorb while accelerating the lunar schedule. Those objectives don't fit on the same spreadsheet. The optimist take says commercial partnerships fill the gap. Private money solves everything, but HLS contract modifications require NASA co-investment for crew safety certification. Commercial partners don't fully self-fund the human rating process. Here's a number that puts the billionaire administrator narrative in perspective. Isaacman's Shift 4 net worth is around $1.8 billion. That's insufficient to backstop even a single year of agency shortfalls. He's not writing a personal check for Artemis. The real path forward involves milestone-based payments stretched across FY26 through FY28, accepting schedule slip risk as the trade-off for fiscal reality. When Nixon cut Apollo 18, 19, and 20 in 1970, he established the template. The hardware was built, the crews were assigned, the missions got canceled anyway because the appropriations math didn't work. 4 critical milestones stand between Isaacman's confirmation and a credible 2028 target. Miss anyone, and the cascade delay runs 18 to 24 months. In Q1 2026, SpaceX must demonstrate Starship orbital refueling, required for HLS validation because Lunar Starship can't reach the moon without it, and that capability has never been demonstrated at scale. In Q2, Blue Origin needs to fly New Glenn, confirming the backup propulsion path. By Q3, Artemis II must complete its crewed lunar flyby on SLS, the mission that maintains congressional support for the entire program. And in Q4, the HLS uncrewed lunar landing demonstration has to work. Isaacman's first major hardware verdict. Any single failure cascades into an 18 to 24-month delay. Administrator authority is coordination, not acceleration. Isaacman can't make Raptor engines throttle deeper. He can't make qualification testing go faster. Physics doesn't negotiate. In December 1968, NASA leadership sent Apollo 8 around the moon on a compressed timeline against engineering caution because the strategic situation demanded risk acceptance. That's the kind of decision Isaacman may face in 2026. Type Tashu determined, intensity high. Here's your descent telemetry summary. Jared Isaacman didn't take over a space agency. He took over a $4.6 billion contract portfolio with 3 competing propulsion architectures, a $23 billion legacy rocket he can't cancel, and a 2028 deadline that China might hit first. The mainstream will keep running billionaire astronaut headlines. We'll keep running the numbers. This has been Go for Powered Descent. Flight out.